Way after dark, with no place to park, nothing in the window. After night,
That thing is fast.
What is this?
Excuse me.
Back door.
Man.
Back door's
You
always
just go right down here. That cuts through right down here.
How are you doing, sir?
Hello.
How are you doing?
Fine.
Good.
How are you?
It's nice to meet you. I'm a veteran in this town. I've been running for a while.
That sounds good.
Okay, right over here. Now, folks, as we go through the tour tonight, the stories that you're about to hear on this tour are factual. We do not make anything up on these tours. The stories that you're going to hear on this tour tonight have all been thoroughly researched by myself personally. Now, we don't have anything that's going to jump out and scare you along the way here tonight. You know, this is not Disney World. But beware, folks. Beware. Because on nights like this in old St. Augustine, sometimes things just might happen. Now, I'll be throwing in history along the way here tonight. Is that cool?
Yes.
Because the history and the ghost stories blend the time periods all together. So are you ready? Yeah. To take a walk with the old dead sheriff? Through the dark streets of St. Augustine and past two old cemeteries along the way? Folks, are you sure you're ready for this? Yep. Well, then you just follow my shiny honey this way. These buildings are made out of a material called coquina stone. You see it right here. This is the same material that the old fort's made out of across the street over here, the Castillo di San Marcos. That fort was built in 1672 and completed in 1695. The coquina stone does not burn. St. Augustine has burned down 3 complete times. The last time back during the turn of the century. The coquina does not burn, so that's why you still see so many of these old buildings still here today. Now, can anyone tell me what would happen if a cannonball hit the coquina stone? What would happen to it? The cannonball would just stick right into the coquina, just like it hit a big old giant sponge. Then the Spanish could run out, dig out that cannonball, and shoot it back at whoever shot it at them. Yeah, they called that recycling back then. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you a little story here. Now, I used to tell this story years ago, and I get people that come back and go on this tour again, and they remember this one particular story, and they always want me to tell it. So I'm going to tell it to you tonight, okay? I'm going to tell you the story about a British pirate by the name of Andrew Ransom. Andrew Ransom was a British pirate. And he was going to come in here to St. Augustine, sack St. Augustine, and burn it to the ground, right? But as he was coming into the inlet with his pirate ship, he went aground. He sent 2 men ashore to come into St. Augustine and kind of check it out and see, what things were going on here. Well, they were immediately captured by the Spanish. Then the Spanish went out to the beach. They took a lantern and they shined the lantern back and forth as a signal to Andrew Ransom aboard his ship that, hey, everything's cool, come on in. Well, he did. He got in a little boat and he came ashore. He was immediately captured by the Spanish. Then the next day, the Spanish went out, captured all the other men that were on that ship, brought them in here to St. Augustine, and they put them in confinement in the Castillo di San Marcos that was still under construction at that time. But they took Andrew Ransom, and they were going to make an example out of him. They were going to public execute him right down here at the city square. But the way they were going to execute him, they were going to garrote him to death. Anybody here know what garroting is?
Torture.
Close. They would put a pole in the ground. At the top of the pole was a hole. They would tie Andrew Ransom to the pole. They would take a rope, put a rope through the hole, around his neck, back through the hole, tie the rope in a knot. And then they would take a tree limb and put a tree limb in between the rope and the pole and start twisting that tree limb. What would happen? The rope would tighten around his neck and he would die of strangulation, right? Well, that's what they were doing to him right down here at the city square. The man that was turning the rope made 2 turns. Andrew Ransom's body went limp and he started sagging to the ground. The man that was turning the tree limb said one more time just to make sure this guy's dead. But when he went to make that last and 3rd turn, guess what happened? The rope broke. Andrew Ransom sagged to the ground. One of the priests from the Trinity Parish Church ran over with a blanket, threw a blanket over him and said he belongs to us and God now. So they took him to the church. He was in that church for 2 years under their protection. When the governor here in St. Augustine granted a pardon to Andrew Ransom, But you want to hear something ironic? He became a very prominent citizen here in St. Augustine, folks, because he was a builder when he was in England, right? So he actually went over and helped the Spanish finish building the Castillo de San Marcos. But you want to hear the real ironic part of this whole story? He got married. Guess who he married? The daughter of the man that was twisting the rope. And if you look at a phone book here today in St. Johns County, you will see Ransons in there, R-A-N-S-O-N. Everyone you see in there is a direct ancestor to Andrew Ransom himself. Right this way. Now folks, as we walk down the street, they landed pretty close to where we're standing at right now. But what he saw when he landed here on that day was a lush land of flowers and trees. He named this land La Floritia, which meant the flower in Spanish. And then he went back to Spain. He told the King of Spain about the beautiful land that he found here. For the next 50 years, Spain tried to start a colony right here in St. Augustine. They tried no less than 6 different times, but they would fail for one reason or another. Finally, in 1565, the King of Spain, King Philip II, said enough is enough. He got his best admiral, a man by the name of Don Pedro Menendez de Avilés, along with 200 soldiers, 400 settlers, come here to St. Augustine, start a colony here once and for all. But in 1564, the French had already arrived here. They were right up here in Jacksonville. They built a fort at the mouth of the St. Johns River. They named that fort Fort Caroline. Don Pedro took his 200 soldiers. He went up and attacked Fort Caroline. He caught the French completely by surprise, burned the fort to the ground, massacred the French soldiers. But 170 of the French soldiers got away by ship. They did not get far. They were caught in a storm, washed ashore 11 miles south of here. Don Pedro caught up to them. He did not have enough food to feed them, enough men to take care of them, and they would not convert over to Catholic. So systematically, one by one, right there on the beaches, cut their heads off, threw their bodies into the water. Now folks, from the Bridge of Lions here, 11 miles south, is the Intercoastal Waterway. It is also known as the Matanzas River. Matanzas in Spanish means slaughter or massacre. Now, do I have anyone here that has been to the Matanzas Inlet? 11 miles south of here on A1. Anybody been there? It is beautiful there, folks. Beautiful white sandy beaches. It's a great place to go swimming or fishing or just anchor your boat out for the weekend, right? But that's also where 170 French soldiers were beheaded on the beaches and their bodies thrown in the water. Now, folks, I'm going to step out of character here for a minute. I'm going to tell you a little event that happened to me 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was living here in St. Augustine in one of the marinas here aboard my sailboat while I was building my new home here. But 2 slips over from my sailboat was a 30-foot powerboat. That powerboat was owned by a very prominent attorney here in St. Augustine. He had an office here on St. George Street. He had a beautiful home over here on Anastasia Island. His name was Tom. I did not see Tom that often go out on his boat. But this one Friday night, I noticed Tom loading up his boat with some food. He's putting a couple cases of beer aboard. So I walked over to him. I said, Tom! What are you up to? He said, man, I'm getting away from the rat race here in St. Augustine for the weekend. I'm going to the Matanzas Inlet. Drop the anchor, chill out. I said, Tom, great, man. You're going to love it there. It's beautiful there. Tom finished loading up his boat that night and he left the marina. I went back aboard my boat. I went to bed. But folks, around 2:30, 3 o'clock that morning, I was suddenly awakened by the sailboats rocking back and forth. I heard a roar of an engine coming into the marina. So I jumped up to see what the heck all the commotion was about. Here comes Tom, flying into the marina. I got off my boat. I walked over to Tom's slip to help Tom come in. But old Tom doesn't even pay attention to me. He just wheeled that boat into the slip. He jumped off the bow of the boat where the bow line puts around the cleat on the dock. I'm standing right there next to the cleat. Tom doesn't look at me. He doesn't say a word to me. He just jumped off the bow of his boat, landed on the dock, turned around, ran up that dock, and folks, Tom was gone. And when I say gone, I mean gone. Because I was the last person ever here in St. Augustine to have seen Tom. So what happened that night? When Tom anchored his boat in the Matanzas Inlet, where these 170 French soldiers were beheaded on the beaches and their bodies were thrown in the water. What did Tom see that night? What did Tom feel that night? What did Tom hear that night? That scared that man so bad that he'd leave everything he owned and never return? Folks, he left his office here on St. George Street. He left his beautiful home over here on Anastasia Island. And today his boat still sits in the marina with 2 cases of beer still aboard and the keys still in ignition. And still as of today, no one has heard or seen from Tom since that night. No one knows what happened here that night. but Tom. And they say on a September night, under a full moon, that the Matanzas Inlet will run red, blood red. Now, ma'am, I have never seen that. I do not want to see that. Would you?
No.
Good answer. Now, folks, you got to figure this. St. Augustine is 441 years old. St. Augustine has had its share of tragedy here. St. Augustine was attacked here by pirates 3 times. Once by Sir Francis Drake. That came into St. Augustine, pillaged, burned, murdered. That happened here 3 times. 3 Seminole Indian Wars right here. The yellow fever outbreak here in St. Augustine in 1821 that killed 1/3 of the population of St. Augustine, 492 people. And then you have the Civil War. And then back during the turn of the century when Henry Morrison Flagler was here, building his 2 beautiful hotels and all of his churches here in St. Augustine, he brought in 2,000 men to help build those hotels and churches. Now, sir, you bring in that many men, what else do you bring in? Ladies! The booze! Does that lead to other than a good time, huh? Jealousy fights murders. Now, folks, a lot of those murders took place here in St. Augustine on these back dark streets that we're walking down on here tonight, back during the turn of the century. I know. Sheriff here then. Now, can anyone here tell me what the most famous haunted house is in the United States? The most famous haunted house, anybody know? Folks, the most famous haunted house in the United States is the White House. That's right. Because the ghost of Abraham Lincoln is still seen today walking down the halls and corridors of the White House, especially around the Oval Office and the Lincoln bedroom. But do you know what, sir? Do you know what?
No.
I'm probably pretty sure that old Mr. Lincoln really did not approve too well of old Bill and Hillary Clinton, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, everybody's laughing here. No Democrats. All right. Now, folks, I was doing this tour, I guess, about 3 weeks ago, right? And I had a big group that night. But in the group that night, I had a little tiny Japanese lady, right? I mean, she was no bigger than this guy right here, right? And I said that about the White House. The little Japanese lady completely lost it. She's cracking up. She's laughing hysterically, right? And folks, I'm here to tell you right now, if you've never ever seen a little Japanese lady laughing hysterically before, that's hysterical in itself, right there. But she's lost it. She's cracking up. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked over to the little Japanese lady and I said, "What the heck is so funny about that?" And she looked up at me and she said, "Mr. Sheriff, I'm a tour guide in the White House."
Oh, really?
Yeah, she says, "I take Japanese people on tours all through the White House." And you're right, Lincoln is still there today. Now, folks, he was first seen by Teddy Roosevelt. He was also seen by Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Gerald R. Ford, Ronald Reagan, Henry Kissinger. Those are just some of the people who said they've seen Lincoln over the years, folks. How many others have seen him, but they won't say anything? Think about that. Right this way. Because, folks, a lot of the bed breakfasts here in St. Augustine do have a resident ghost in them. When we leave here, we're going to be walking to an old cemetery. But as we walk to the cemetery, folks, we're going to pass one of those haunted bed and breakfasts. It's called the Southern Wind Inn. Now, there's been a lady seen at the Southern Wind Inn wearing a beautiful white wedding dress, walking back and forth on the porch in the front up on the 2nd floor. We do not know who the lady is, but we have a pretty good idea who she might be. Because back in the 1800s, right here in this neighborhood, lived a family, bear with me now, that had 2 young daughters. And the big thing was back then, get your daughters married off as soon as possible. One of the daughters got married when she was 16 years old.
It's not legal.
Not nowadays.
But the other daughter, the poor thing, she didn't get married till she was 31 years old. And she was married in a beautiful white wedding dress, but she was only married here for a year when she died. And she was buried in the cemetery in her beautiful white wedding dress, one house away from where we think we see her today, walking back and forth on that porch, 2nd floor in front of the Southern Wind Inn. Now, when we walk by the Southern Wind Inn on our way to the cemetery, I'm not going to stop and start talking about it out of respect for the people that are staying here. But I will point up to the porch as we walk by. Take a look. She's been seen more than once. And I'll also tell you something pretty funny that happened when we went by there on a tour just a few nights ago. Remind me if I forget. Now, do I have anyone here that does not believe in a ghost? If you don't believe in a ghost, just raise your hand. It's no big thing. Well, for this to work, sir, I'm going to need you to raise your hand. Okay? I'm going to say this again. And when I say the expression, no big thing, that's when you raise your hand. And just raise it high like you're really proud you don't believe in a ghost, okay? You got that? No big thing hand up. Okay. Now, do I have any... No, sir, down.
Oh.
No big thing hand up. Okay. No, down. Are you married to this guy?
No.
Okay. When I say the expression no big thing, then you raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Now, do I have anyone here that does not believe in a ghost? If you don't believe in a ghost, just raise your hand. It's no big thing. You, sir! You don't believe in a ghost? Then, sir, I challenge you that the next time you come to St. Augustine with your beautiful girlfriend, girlfriend. Yeah, sometimes I get in trouble for doing this. Had a brother or sister from West Virginia one. I was totally embarrassed, I'm telling you. But the next time you come to St. Augustine with your beautiful girlfriend, she is beautiful, by the way, sir. I want you two to make a reservation to stay in a bed and breakfast here in St. Augustine called the St. Francis Inn. Specifically ask for room 3A for Lily's room. Spend 2 nights in the room. And I guarantee you, sir, or you, that if I ever ask you that question again, no, you will not raise your hand. The St. Francis Inn is located right here on St. George Street, but down on the other side of the city square, 3 blocks on the left side. Now, the St. Francis Inn was built back in the 1700s, but around 1840, that inn was owned and occupied by this aunt, uncle, and their teenage nephew. And they were doing a pretty good business even back then. When they decided they needed some extra help to help clean some of the rooms, so they hired a beautiful young black slave girl. Her name was Lily. Lily came to work for them, but something happened they did not anticipate. Lily and their teenage nephew fell in love with each other. Yeah, they found together in one of their rooms one night. Back then, that was very taboo. So the next day, they sent Lily away. Oh yeah, they sent her away all right. Shoo. Later that night, the nephew was so distraught that he went up in the attic, hung himself. Now, Lily's room is located on the 3rd floor in the vicinity where the nephew hung himself. Now, she's been seen walking down the halls and corridors and down the stairwells. Now, some of the things that's happened to people that have stayed in room 3A or Lily's room. One night, this couple checked in. They have 3 suitcases. They walked in the room. They put 2 suitcases down the floors. They walked in, took the 3rd suitcase, opened that one up, put it on a tray table. They turned around, they closed the door, put the chain lock on the door, got ready and went to bed that night. But when they woke up the next morning, all 3 of the suitcases were sitting outside the hallway. The chain lock was still on the door. The lady's purse was turned completely upside down with the contents scattered all over the floor. Her makeup case in the bathroom filled with water. Another night, another couple checked in, again a man and a woman. They went to bed that night. But when they woke up the next morning, the girlfriend here was still in the bed. But her boyfriend here, he was under the bed. Yeah, he said he don't know how the heck he got under there. He said he wasn't out drinking the night before, but his girlfriend had to run downstairs and get help to come up and lift that heavy bed up and pull his butt out from under that bed. Another night, another couple checked in, again a man and a woman. They went to bed that night, but folks, holy mackerel, in the middle of the night, the girlfriend received a sexy, passionate kiss. The next morning, she rolled over to her boyfriend and she said, "Boyfriend, thank you for that sexy, passionate kiss. That was awful nice of you." He rolled back over to her and said, "Woman, I didn't kiss you." Wow, some here we don't know. Or maybe now, just maybe, the nephew has returned, huh? Now the maid that cleans that room, she'll come up with a little cart. She'll park her cart out in the hallway. She'll go in the room, she'll start cleaning the room. She'll turn the TV on because she likes to watch MTV. But every time she returns to the room, the TV's always on another channel. So we just figured, oh, Lily doesn't like MTV. Now, if you're channel surfing and you come across the History Channel, Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, or AD, folks, you will see some of the ghost stories of old St. Augustine. Lily and the St. Francis Inn is one of the stories you'll see. A story of the lighthouse is another story you'll see. And the ghost, yes, the ghost of Judge Stickney in the Huguenot Cemetery is another story you will see. But folks, I'm going to tell you that story a little bit later on in the tour with just a little bit of a twist. With bodies in the coffins. And folks, they actually said sometimes, they set the coffins up right there, that bay window open facing out this way, so people could walk there on that sidewalk and take a peek in there and see who's getting ready to go to the old cemetery. Now, I do not know if this story is true or not. It's like been handed down over the years. I can't verify this. But folks, somebody told me that they had the coffin sitting there on a Lazy Susan. I need you to take your hands and put your hands over your ears like this. A Okay, so you can't hear. Okay, okay, you got. You can't hear a word I'm saying. You're shaking your head no, so you can hear me. So you can't hear me. What? You can't hear me. Okay, folks, I gotta tell you what happened when we were coming by here on the tour. Probably about a couple nights ago, I guess. I was coming by here with a large group, probably 24, 25 people. I'm walking backwards and I'm pointing up to the porch, right? Well, folks, see that corner room right up there? Well, that room is called the honeymoon suite. Well, folks, here I come, 25 people. I'm walking backwards and I'm pointing up to the porch. Well, guess what? Apparently the new bride forgot to pull down that middle shade. That's right, folks. So now the old sheriff and 25 people now know what a pair of black thong underwear look like from the rear. Right this way. I made very good tips that night. We're between 6 and 7 feet tall. Their chief, Chief Talamato himself, was over 7 feet tall, and he claimed he was over 300 years old. Does anyone here know how tall Ponce de Leon was? 4 foot 11 inches. But they measured you back in the old Spanish days from the bottom of your feet to the plume of your hat. Measured Ponce de Leon that way, he was 4'11", all right. Took his hat off, he was 4'6". So imagine the look on his face standing there talking to Chief Talamato over 7 feet tall. I've been there seen that myself. Now, in 1565, when Don Pedro Menendez de Avilés landed here, and they started their colony here in St. Augustine, folks, they built a wall entirely around St. Augustine for their own self-defense. It was called the Cuber Line. One of only 3 cities in the United States to do that. The other 2 being Charleston, South Carolina, and New York City. But folks, when they built that wall around St. Augustine, they started their colony here, and they built their cemetery here. They actually built this cemetery right over the Timucuan Indian burial grounds. So legend says, if you have any Indian blood in you, it don't matter what it is, Apache, Sioux, Arapaho, Seminole, Cherokee, that if you stand here long enough and stare in that cemetery, you'll start seeing shadows moving among those headstones.